So what is hot work? Hot work is using open flames or heat that could ignite materials. Welding, burning, brazing, propane soldering, oxyacetylene cutting, grinding ferrous or iron-containing metals. So let's go over some of the OSHA requirements with hot work. And let's talk about process safety management and hot work. OSHA requires the employer to issue a permit for all hot work operations. The purpose of this provision is to assure that the employer is aware of the hot work being performed and that appropriate safety precautions have been taken prior to beginning the work. Now let's look at OSHA 1910.119K Process Safety Management Hot Work Program Requirements. 1910.119K Hot Work Permit. And then under 1910.119K1, the employer shall issue a hot work permit for hot work operations conducted on or near a covered process. Continuing, 1910.119K2, the permit shall document that the fire prevention and protection requirements in 29 CFR 1910.252A have been implemented prior to beginning the hot work operations. It shall indicate the date or dates authorized for hot work and identify the object on which hot work is to be performed. The permit shall be kept on file until completion of the hot work operations. And I just want to mention that 1910.252 is going to be the general industry welding standard. So you're going to have the PSM standard that then refers you to another standard for the hot work permit requirements. So let's take a look at OSHA 29 CFR 1910 Subpart Q. And Subpart Q is the welding standard. So let's take a look at what this standard requires. Now under 1910.252A1I, fire hazards, if the object to be welded or cut cannot readily be moved, all movable fire hazards in the vicinity shall be taken to a safe place. And what's a safe place? Well, it depends upon the potential fire hazard, the material, the work that's being performed. 1910.252A1II, guards. If the object to be welded or cut cannot be moved, and if all the fire hazards cannot be removed, then guards shall be used to confine the heat, sparks, and slag, and to protect the immovable fire hazards. That may be a fire blanket, a fire box, or something like that, where you have fixed equipment that you can't actually move that object. It may be a fixed object. 1910.252A1II, restrictions. If the requirements stated in paragraph A1I and A1II, if this section cannot be followed, then welding and cutting shall not be performed. 1910.252A2, special precautions. When the nature of the work to be performed falls within the scope of paragraph A1II, this section, certain additional precautions may be necessary. 1910.252A2I, combustible material. Wherever there are floor openings or cracks in the flooring that cannot be closed, precautions shall be taken so that no readily combustible materials on the floor below will be exposed to sparks which might drop through the floor. The same precaution shall be observed with regard to cracks or holes in walls, open doorways, and open or broken windows. Now that may sound like, you know, we're kind of getting into fine minutia about fine details, but literally facilities, plants have been burned down to the ground, tens of millions of dollars of equipment loss due to an opening in a floor, a crack, a wall, or something like that, where a hot spark got loose, got into a part of the facility unobserved, and started a fire and was undetected for hours and then burned the entire building down. So this is very, very important that if we can't close these floorings from the cracks, the openings, that we have adequate safe precautions. Now let's talk about fire extinguishers. Now that's going to be under 1910 252 A2II fire extinguishers. Suitable fire extinguishing equipment shall be maintained in a state of readiness for instant use. Such equipment may consist of pails of water, buckets of sand, hose, or portable extinguishers depending upon the nature and quantity of the combustible material exposed. Now let's talk about the fire wash. Under 1910 252 A2II, it reviews the requirements for fire wash. Under A2II, fire watchers shall be required whenever welding or cutting is performed in locations when other than a minor fire might develop or any of the following conditions exist. Appreciable combustible material in building construction or contents closer than 35 feet to the point of operation. Appreciable combustibles are more than 35 feet away but are easily ignited by sparks. Wall or floor openings within a 35-foot radius expose combustible material in adjacent areas, including concealed spaces in walls or floors. Combustible materials are adjacent to the opposite side of metal partitions, walls, ceilings, or roofs, and are likely to be ignited by conduction or radiation. So we might have something that's metallic, that's conductive, and that's going to be conductive. That's going to conduce heat to another part of the facility that may actually result in a fire. Now let's talk about some of the requirements of the fire watch. Under 1910 252 A2II fire watchers shall have fire extinguishing equipment readily available and be trained in its use. They shall be familiar with facilities for sounding an alarm in the event of a fire. They shall watch for fires in all exposed areas. Try to extinguish them only when obviously within the scope of the equipment available or otherwise sound the alarm. A fire watch shall be maintained for at least a half hour after completion of welding or cutting operations to detect and extinguish possible smoldering fires. Now please note that I emphasize that at least a half hour after completion of welding or cutting operations. Let me give you an example. University of Texas at Austin, I believe it was in 1996, they had some hot work that was going on, loose sparks and embers undetected, overnight, caught on fire, and did millions of dollars worth of damage. And I know some insurance companies that go beyond the half hour, and they actually say 45 minutes. So half an hour would be the minimum requirement that fire watch needs to stay in that area after completion of work to look for any smoldering fires. It may not be obvious right when that work's complete.